Well, one way it could happen is that as we get closer and closer to it, our ability to accept these strange things becomes broader and broader, so when the moment finally comes, yes, you are a self-dribbling jeweled basketball, but hey, it ain't no big deal, and you saw it coming years ago, so what? I don't know. I vacillate on all of this because as a rationalist, I'm very puzzled by my intellectual burden of a completely irrational revelation. I would never have wished this upon myself. I'm much more comfortable as a fairly hard-nosed skeptical thinker. Yet I spent so much time with this idea that I guess I have become infected with it. It now seems to me as reasonable as anything else. There is, unremarked by science, a universal tendency toward complexity through time. It's a law, as real as the law of the speed of light or the segregation of genes. But science has never said that, because science is, as practiced out of the 19th century, is militantly anti-teleological. In other words, it denies any end goal, any purpose, any predefined end state. Science just thinks the universe is a random walk. But I think it's becoming harder and harder to maintain that idea in the face of the evidence. There are too many choices. If you have a protein of several thousand atoms, it has 10 high 16 folding configurations it can choose from. If it worked through those things by trial and error, it would take the life of the universe for that molecule to figure out its minimum energy configuration and assume it. So there is a kind of logic, or there are constraints that we aren't aware of that push processes toward completion. And I think, the new sciences of chaos theory, dynamics, complexity, fractals, strange attractors are going to deliver this into our understanding. It's a very exciting time. I mean, we're taking the first intellectual steps toward the real re-understanding of nature since at least the invention of the calculus and probably the invention of Greek mathematics. Yeah.
This model that you pointed out sounds a little bit to me like a phase transition that's in consciousness. When it reaches the point of complexity and then there's a transition, but it seems to we're all connected on some level with the morphic field and all, but that makes it, few will start and then it's just like popcorn. All of a sudden everyone has that
like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
Well, you put your finger on it. The key word is connectedness. I'm very interested in the philosophical, if you want to put it that way, implications of the World Wide Web and the Internet. I mean, the Internet is a fascinating thing. You can't see it. Therefore, if you're not into it, the world appears to have remained the same. Nothing has changed. And yet, actually, the largest human artifact ever created has sprung into being in the last 5 years. It's as big as this planet, and nobody controls it. It has no central control. No one can decide that it shall be this or shall be that. There are certain areas under limited control. Well, but what does the Internet do? Well, it connects us together. It broadens and deepens and makes more immediate the cultural database that we're all swimming in. And I think that probably it is a model for, or not a model, but it is an anticipation of this transcendental object at the end of time. I mean, I have said in these lectures, my idea of the future perfect state is a world of 500 million human beings of all races, genders, sexual persuasion, so forth and so on. 500 million well-fed, healthy people living mostly in warm climates, largely naked, very little physical cultural manifestation. But if you could project yourself into one of these people's minds or bodies, you would see that when they close their eyes, there are menus hanging in space. Those menus are there because at age 3 there was a surgical implant behind the eyelids of something like a very small contact lens. And that is the philosopher's stone. That is the culmination of 10,000 years of technical evolution and engineering dreams. And what it boils down to is a little black disc that's surgically implanted behind your eyelid, and that's your interface to the culture. And you can move into the net, which is, of course, virtually implemented. It's not text. It's not even hypertext. It's a three-dimensional, non-material world ruled by the laws not of physics, but the imagination. And I call this turning the body inside out. This is what the cultural enterprise is for. We want to live in the imagination with the body as a freely commandable object in the imagination. In other words, replace the laws of physics with the laws of dream or imagination. This is culturally within our reach right now. I mean, if it were as important as piling up nuclear stockpiles or screwing people over in 100 different ways, we'd have it in 5 years, not 17. As it is, we'll probably have to wait 17 years. But the fact that we can make a model like that, that's a bridge from where we're sitting to a spiritually transcendental realm that's within reach, is, I think, very positive. Now all we have to do is fill in the blanks. Keep taking psychedelics so that our engineering standards stay high, so that we stay focused on the goals that we're trying to maximize, and then try to promote the idea that anxiety is inappropriate. Anxiety poisons the will to action. And I really think that this is going to be the task of the high-tech alternative culture, is to provide an optimistic vision. Because you see, the people who run the world are becoming more and more panic-stricken because a world is ending. Their world is ending. The world of the shell game and the international corporation and the propagandized passive electorate and all these things that have been, that game is ending. And there is no substitute vision being discussed at the upper echelons of the control mechanism of this society. It's coming from the grassroots. The people at the top are too paralyzed with the poisons they've imbibed by feeding at the trough of the old order. They can't think their way out of their dilemma. In fact, they have to pay guys with ponytails just to turn on the machines in the morning. They're so distant from the things they rule, you see. Yeah.
I'm wondering that, like, in my experience and other people talking to me about taking hallucinogens, you talk about dissolving the boundaries. Another way to look at it is you talk about anxiety. It's anxiety or fear eventually goes away of the other, which if we have a boundary, there is another. And in terms of like men and women, if women are more other for men than vice versa, that on a hallucinogen, a man can get to a place where he observes and goes beyond the boundaries to know that it's not the other. And if a woman is in that place, what I, from my own personal experience and from other people talking to me, is though women kind of find their voice in the way of the world to say how okay not to have all these experiences with the other. And at some hope of things accelerating, my mother was born in 1921 and was very conservative,
has come to the point where she's 73 years old or whatever and has a 77-year-old boyfriend, and at dinner, and very proud and laughing, says, well, I am living in sin. You must think your mother would say that. And I kind of like to hear what you would say about, in terms of otherness and how psychedelics can, what the dissolving of the boundaries does and how we carry that to other people.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's important in all these discussions to remember there is nothing on earth as much like a woman as a man. The next species over, whatever it is, the difference is enormous. The other thing to remember is if you believe in evolutionary theory, then this has always amazed me. Women are the creation of choices made by men. Men are the creation of choices made by women. The aesthetic difference is striking. I mean, apparently men prefer smooth, gentle, nurturing, curvaceous forms, and apparently women, their aesthetic is fulfilled by a rougher cut. We are reflections of the desires of the opposite gender because we've been subject to selection in the sexual process that way. As far as everybody is struggling to keep up with the evolution of the culture, I experienced the same thing. I mean, my father is a very conservative character, and he's now 80, and he seems to go out of his way to be outrageous. And it's maybe the one good thing television is doing is that straight people, and by that I don't mean non-gay, I mean in the sense of non-psychedelic, straight people can't escape from the weirdness of the culture. You know, no matter who you are, you have to look at this stuff. It's in your face, and eventually you bend. So approaching the other is a process of redefining yourself to be more acceptable to it. You know, there's a coming to meet. It becomes more familiar as you become more familiar with it. But the truly other, what Rudolf Otto called the totally other, is other in principle. It's like the archetype of the other, and it can't be assimilated. But wherever the other is particularized in a person, a work of art, a place, it can be approached through a process of templating yourself to it. You know, we become what we behold, no matter how bizarre what we behold may be.